I mentioned the Zion point because I've seen him in two very important games. Most important games. The in-season tournament against the Lakers was not good. He got into better shape. This last game against the Lakers, that's another one there. He wasn't good.
2 versus the Lakers.
And now this third one in the play-in against the Lakers, again, it is a very tough matchup. But I feel like Zion's play style is also a big reason why he can be a playoff dropper. 771 of his field goal attempts this entire season, have been layups.
Of course.
His second most taken shot type has been jump shots at 189. There is about a 600 shot type difference between layups and the second type of shot that he takes. This is an offensive player, while he is dominant, is only taking one type of shot. And when you're facing teams that have personnel that they body up the paint and they can wall up, it's very hard for him to score. And that's what I've noticed with these Lakers matchups. You're right, it is a terrible matchup. And against some teams in the West, he'll be much better, like OKC, like Phoenix, Dallas, maybe you can include in there, even though I think Daniel Gafford has been great. Against the Clippers. But then you get into these matchups where if they face the Lakers, I don't know how that's going to look. Or if they face Minnesota, we don't know how that's going to look. And he has to expand his game. That's the next step for him, is expanding his offensive game and adding some more variety in his offense.
I'm actually interested to see what his stats are versus Minnesota. Against Minnesota, he's averaging 31 on... Is this... Oh, I almost threw up saying 83% from the field. I would have believed it. 75% from the field against Minnesota.
How many games?
This is 2 games. So I understand it is a tough matchup with the bigs, but Zion Williamson has showed, even just look at this past week, against the Warriors, against the Kings, against the Suns, 3 of these teams that were competing heavily for the play-in or to clutch up and make the last spot of the playoffs in the Western Conference. He played well against all of those teams except the Los Angeles Lakers. And like you mentioned, which you said, to your credit, you already gave him the fact that it was a bad matchup. The games where we've questioned Zion the most have been against the Los Angeles Lakers, who just happen to have a great game plan and great personnel to defend against him. So I still do trust him in these situations. Again, he is a really good passer. He is a solid playmaker. The offense just runs a lot better when the ball is in his hands. But in matches versus the Lakers, there's really not much you can do other than start making the right basketball play and keep giving that concerted effort, especially if the shots aren't falling the way they normally do.
You look at Zion this year versus Memphis, who they have interior defenders. He's averaging 18 points per game in 4 games. I think Memphis has done a great job at guarding him. Versus the Lakers, he's averaging 20 a game, 58% from the field, down from his normal efficiency. Versus Golden State, 21 a game, 49% from the field, a team that is anchored by Draymond Green. And that's a team that they could meet if they lose to the Lakers.
Last time they matched up, he just had 26.
He played terrible in the fourth, though.
He averaged 21, and when he's faced him this year in 3 games. It's not been 4, it's been 3 games.
But again, that game was also for, one, the Warriors to have a chance to be a top 8 seed, so they only played 1 playing game instead of 2. And again, the Pelicans needed that one.
Thing with
they did fumble down the stretch of the fourth.
The thing with that it's tricky for that game because when he was like being matched up with Draymond and Trace, he didn't play too well. Dre was able to hold his own. It was really just the moments where our troll coach took the guys out while Zion was in. So
where he
Zion
put a smaller lineup in.
And Zion just took apart. Like, he exploited the mismatches. So it's like, against Draymond, you don't expect anybody to play elite, just Draymond Green. So, you know what I'm saying? But, like, Zion, for when he needed to turn up in this game, he did. So,
is he similar to, like, Blake Griffin?
Blake was not terrible. Blake was a little bit more finesse than Zion. Just a little bit
more polished. Yeah. He definitely worked on his mid-range.
Blake is a good one. I feel like the one that comes to people's minds a lot is Charles Barkley, understanding he's undersized for his position, but obviously he has this brute strength. The difference with that is that Charles actually could step out and knock down some jump shots.
Got a great post game.
He did have an excellent post game for sure. But at the same time, I'm with you. I think that this offseason is going to be predicated on expanding outside, really stretching the floor a little bit more. It's funny because his debut, he came out and he knocked down 4 threes, and that's just not who Zion is. You expect him to be that interior presence, but now we're here and we understand that does need to be a part of his game. You've seen Giannis every single year try to get better and better at the mid-range, try and step out from the three-point line from time to time, just so defenses aren't just clogging the paint on him. And even still, they still have defenses clogging the paint because he's not that efficient of a jump shooter. But you need to at least make defenses think that you're going to attempt those jump shots. But again, he's so strong, arguably the strongest in the league outside of a Steven Adams. I think that with that alone, he'll still be able to average 24 to 25 in a playoff series, but still continue to be that playmaker that he's shown to be all year.
The thing is, where do if the Pels don't make let's play in some fun scenarios. The Pelicans don't make the playoffs, or they do get smoked out in the first round. Where does this team go? Because there's not really much room to really get too much better outside of internally.
You trade Brandon Ingram. I feel like that's what it unfortunately comes down to, and I feel like that's unfair to Brandon Ingram as he is a great player in his own right. But at the same time, you understand when Zion is on the court, we're still a great basketball team. We have some great role players. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Alvarado has given some strong minutes. Dyson Daniels has been awesome this season. CJ McCollum, of course, at this point in time has become a glorified role player. But they still continue to play winning basketball even without Brandon Ingram. We saw it last year without Brandon Ingram. They were one of the top seeds in the Western Conference until Zion got hurt. Brandon Ingram was able to put a stretch down where they were able to be in play and contention, but unfortunately that still wasn't able to be enough. I look at Zion and understand my ceiling's higher with him. Brandon Ingram can get me strong assets that I can put a player that fits next to Zion Williamson and lift our ceiling even higher than it already is.
Just hard to think of a second star that fits perfectly with Zion. We've had this conversation probably a couple months ago. You could put role players around him. Of course, you want shooters around him. You want guys that can move off the ball well around him. You need like a legitimate rim protector, I think, next to him as well. But it is hard to think of kind of that second star if you were to move off Brandon Ingram, because it feels unlikely you trade Brandon Ingram and trade up into a player. Mm-hmm. Is there a world where Milwaukee wants to tear things down? You could trade Brandon Ingram and picks, and Dame wants to come, but then you have CJ there. So I'm just going through my head trying to think of players who could be available.
Now, this name always comes up when you think of a big or obviously a bigger type of player, especially because of recent Trae Young. Like Trae Young, they've needed a point guard for years. They had Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball ends up goes
playing
away.
off ball now. You're going to Trae play more off ball.
That's fair.
Tried that with DeJounte,
but the pick and roll would be unbelievable.
It should be,
but it would be.
Thought Giannis and Dame would be too.
But it is when they use it.
Yeah, it is when they use it.
That's fair.
They need to use it more.
I don't think the Pelicans need to rush anything. I mean, these past 2 seasons,
I'm not against that either.
I don't think you need to rush.
Zion was unhealthy, and Ingram was the healthier of the two. And now this year it's kind of been flipped. You still don't know which one you can really rely on the most long term. And I don't think their biggest need is replacing Ingram, because they were great with Ingram this year until he got hurt.
Well, he just asked, if they fail and they don't make the playoffs, where do you go from here? You just run it back again?
I wouldn't run it back with the same team. I would add a center.
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
if they
Good
get
point.
somebody like Nick Claxton,
And they gave away their pick this year.
that would be great.
Like they don't want. They're
They're getting next year's
they're
pick,
letting the Lakers
2025.
keep this one. So
Because I think if they get Nick Claxton, it now allows them to be a small ball lineup all the time, because Jonas gets played off the court in 80% of matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So if they get Claxton, that's not going to happen, and they have reliable center play. Because whenever they want to go small, they just put Larry Nance in there, and he's just not as good as somebody like Claxton if you were to have him.
What is Claxton costing you?
I think he's going to OKC.
That would be awesome.
He's getting a nice bag.
2025.
I was
I'll
say
say
25.
this. He goes to Claxton. He goes to
OKC.
Claxton. He goes to OKC.
Check him, move to
Lord
the
have
4.
mercy.
That's why I don't think New Orleans necessarily needs to rush it, but I think you have to have a real conversation about the West is getting better than us quickly. Like next season with the Grizzlies back, they could probably be better than the Pelicans. You already have OKC. You already have Denver. You have young and up and coming teams.
These old teams fall off. So.
True. But I mean, really the only ones I could think of are the Clippers and Suns, and you have young teams ready to replace them. Like the Spurs probably a few years away from being legit contender with
Grizzlies
Wemby.
are going to be back.
The Grizzlies are going to be back.
Rockets
Rockets probably going to be a playoff team next year. I think there's a real chance that happens. So that's why I don't think it's about rushing with New Orleans, but it's about figuring out a way to become a contender, because it feels like they're kind of falling into like they're going to be a strong team. They're probably going to sit around that 4 to 7 seed for the next couple of seasons, but I don't see a world where we're going into 2025, 2026 and being like, yeah, this is one of the top 5 contenders in the league this season.